The snow crunched beneath Ethan's boots as he made his way through the thick forest. The winter air was biting cold, his breath fogging in front of him as he pushed forward. This was his favorite time of year. Quiet, peaceful, with the forest blanketed in white. But today, something felt off. He couldn't place it at first. Just an odd tension in the air, like the woods were holding their breath. Ethan had grown up near this forest, spending countless hours exploring its hidden paths, and he knew it better than anyone. But today, the familiar trails seemed foreign, and the trees stood taller, darker, casting long shadows that danced eerily in the dimming light of the afternoon. He pulled his jacket tighter around him, trying to shake the strange feeling creeping up his spine. Maybe it was just the cold playing tricks on him. The sun was setting fast, and a deep blue twilight was settling over the landscape. He knew he should head back soon, but something in him hesitated. Then he heard it, faint but unmistakable, a branch snapping behind him. Ethan stopped, turning to peer into the woods, but all he could see were the dark shapes of trees, their branches heavy with snow. He stood still, listening. No wind, no movement, just silence. Yet the feeling that he wasn't alone hung in the air, pressing down on him. Trying to laugh it off, he took another step forward, but there it was again. Another sound, closer this time. Not the sound of an animal. No, this was deliberate, like footsteps. Someone was out there watching him. Ethan's heart began to race. He quickened his pace, heading back toward the cabin, the snow now falling harder, thick flakes obscuring his vision. His breath came in fast, sharp bursts, the cold stinging his lungs. Every so often he glanced over his shoulder, convinced that something or someone was trailing him, always just out of sight. The woods were a maze, the paths all starting to look the same as darkness fell. He cursed under his breath, realizing he had veered off course. His usual confidence in the forest was crumbling. Panic started to set in, his thoughts racing as the sense of being followed grew stronger. Suddenly the sound of heavy breathing filled the air, not his own, but something behind him, close, too close. He froze, his heart pounding in his ears. Slowly he turned around, his eyes scanning the trees, searching for anything that could explain the noise. Nothing. The forest was empty, yet he could feel eyes on him, an unseen presence lurking just beyond his sight. The snow was falling faster now, and the temperature had dropped significantly. He was shivering, his fingers numb inside his gloves. He had to get back to the cabin, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was hunting him, waiting for him to slip up, to stop moving. In a rush of adrenaline, Ethan sprinted through the snow, his legs burning with the effort. He didn't care if he was going the right way anymore. He just needed to get out of the woods. The sound of footsteps behind him grew louder, more frantic, matching his own pace. He dared not look back. Then, out of nowhere, the cabin came into view, barely visible through the snowstorm. Relief washed over him and he pushed himself harder, practically throwing himself at the door. He slammed it shut behind him, locking it tight, his chest heaving as he struggled to catch his breath. For a moment, he stood there, leaning against the door, listening. Silence. No footsteps, no breathing, just the howling wind outside. But even though he was safe inside, that feeling, the one that had gripped him all day, still lingered. Something was out there, watching. He slowly walked to the window, brushing aside the frost to peer out into the storm. The snow was falling so thick he could barely see beyond a few feet. Yet in the distance, near the edge of the trees, something moved. A dark shape, too tall to be an animal, too still to be anything natural. It just stood there, waiting. He stepped back from the window, his pulse racing. Whatever it was, it hadn't followed him inside. Not yet. Ethan tried to convince himself it was just his mind playing tricks. But deep down, he knew the forest held secrets, dark secrets, and whatever was watching him wasn't done. It was only a matter of time.